August 18th, 1590. Governor John White steps off a longboat and walks up onto the shore of Roanoke Island. He had been away for 3 years. 3 years of Atlantic wars, commandeered ships, and shattered promises. Today was his granddaughter's 3rd birthday. Virginia Dare, first English child born on American soil. He expected the sounds of a working settlement, hammer strikes, children's voices, smoke from cook fires. He walked into total silence. The fort stood exactly as he had left it, gate unbroken, palisades upright. 115 people had lived here, men, women, children. Gone. No bodies, no blood, no freshly turned earth. One mark left behind, a single word carved deep into the wood of the entrance post. Croatoan. For more than 4 centuries, those 8 letters anchored America's most persistent historical cold case. 115 people gone. Every explanation offered for the next 300 years attacked the wrong question. They asked where the colonists disappeared to. The actual question was where they chose to go. To understand that choice, you need the situation that made it the only rational option. In 1584, Queen Elizabeth I granted Sir Walter Raleigh a royal charter to colonize the Americas. England and Spain were running live naval skirmishes across the Atlantic. A permanent foothold on the American coast was strategic necessity. Raleigh sent scouts in 1584, a military garrison in 1585, and a civilian settler colony in 1587. The 115 who arrived in July 1587 were not soldiers. Farmers, craftsmen, mothers, children. Ordinary recruited civilians. Their navigator, Simon Fernandez, refused to carry them to their intended destination at Chesapeake Bay. He offloaded them at Roanoke Island and sailed away. Before White left for England to fetch supplies, he and the colonists agreed on a signal system. If they had to relocate, they would carve their destination into a post. If they were forced out by violence, they would add a Maltese cross above the name. When White returned in August 1590, the post read Croatoan. No cross above it. Clean departure. No distress signal. They had left voluntarily, and they had told him where they went. White tried to sail for Hatteras Island immediately. His crew refused. Weather, dwindling supplies, and forced a return to England. He never returned to the New World again. The trail went cold. For 350 years, the theories multiplied without a shred of physical evidence. Massacre by Spanish naval forces, slaughter by neighboring tribes, starvation, disease, all of them at once. Every theory shared the same flaw, no physical evidence to support any of them. Then, in the 1930s, a collection of inscribed rocks appeared across the Carolinas. 48 of them, called the Dare Stones, supposedly messages scratched by Eleanor Dare, John White's daughter, as the colony moved through the wilderness. Emory University endorsed the first stone. National magazines ran the story for years. A journalist from the Saturday Evening Post began digging into the man who kept finding and selling the stones. Forensic geologists analyzed the weathering. Stones, supposedly 350 years old, showed 20 to 30 years of erosion, maximum. Every stone beyond the first was confirmed a forgery. The Dare stones consumed a decade and left the mystery exactly where it started. The real answer didn't arrive from rocks. It arrived from a lamp and a 400-year-old watercolor map. In 2012, a researcher at the British Museum was running conservation analysis on a map John White had painted in 1585. La Virginia Pars. Scholars had studied this document for more than a century without anything unusual appearing. The researcher applied a specialized backlight beneath the painted surface, a standard technique for detecting underdrawings. Under a small square of paper glued to the map's surface, a faint geometric shape came through. A four-sided fort symbol. Its position, 50 miles inland from Roanoke Island, at the junction of the Roanoke and Chowan rivers. White's own journals from 1587 had recorded that the colonists discussed moving 50 miles into the Main. White pasted paper over the symbol before sailing home, standard counterintelligence practice in Elizabethan naval exploration. The map held the colony's intended destination, hidden from Spanish intelligence for 4 centuries. That discovery redirected everything. The First Colony Foundation shifted focus to Bertie County, North Carolina, 50 miles inland from Roanoke. They called the target Site X. In 16th century historical archaeology, you don't dig for wooden forts. Wood disappears in 400 years of soil chemistry and fungal decay. You search refuse layers. Ceramics, metals, and organic residue survive where timber doesn't. At Site X, the soil produced fragments of Surrey, Hampshire borderware, a lead-glazed greenish English ceramic produced between 1480 and 1620, exported almost exclusively to English colonial sites. Copper artifacts, Elizabethan iron fasteners, lead shot consistent with late 16th century English firearms. Then the team identified what wasn't there. Clay tobacco pipes. Site X turned up 0. The Jamestown colonists, who arrived in 1607, were devoted smokers. Their trash pits averaged 200 to 300 clay pipe fragments per cubic meter. Site X, excavated across hundreds of square meters, produced 0 pipe fragments. That absence is a chronological lock. These deposits predate the Jamestown era. They belong to a pre-1600 occupation. Elizabethan settlers, 50 miles inland, at the exact location John White had concealed on his map. Skeptics said Site X could be a temporary scouting camp rather than a permanent settlement. The First Colony Foundation answered with a second confirmation. Site Y. A second Elizabethan archaeological site in Bertie County, independent from Site X. Same ceramic signature, same chronological profile, same absence of post-1600 material. 2 sites with matching Elizabethan fingerprints in the same county form a settlement zone. The First Colony Foundation and UNC Press released Excavating the Lost Colony Mystery in 2024, with full excavation data and previously unpublished artifact photographs. The inland migration is the current documented archaeological consensus, drawn from primary excavation records at 2 confirmed sites. But Bertie County is only half the answer. The word carved on the post points southeast, toward the island the 16th century English called Croatoan, now known as Hatteras Island. The Croatoan tribe had been English allies since Raleigh's 1584 reconnaissance. They were the only indigenous community in the region with a sustained cooperative relationship with the settlers. They had spent years teaching the colonists to read Carolina tides, fish the coastal sounds, and grow corn in unfamiliar soil. When survival became the immediate goal, the Croatoans were the one proven reliable option within reach. The oral traditions of Lumbee and Croatoan descendants have stated for centuries that the English settlers came to Hatteras Island and integrated with the tribe. Mainstream academic historians categorized this as cultural mythology and kept looking for a European-style dramatic finale. The 2024 to 2025 excavation season on Hatteras Island settled that argument. Archaeologists found English and Croatoan refuse pits positioned directly adjacent in the same depositional layer. Not stacked, with one culture arriving after another. Side by side, the same layer. Contemporaneous occupation. The artifact inventory: Algonquian ceramics, 16th century English iron tools, European copper trade beads, and a corroded rapier hilt. A rapier in Elizabethan England belonged to a military officer. It doesn't wash up from a shipwreck and land in a domestic trash pit. It ended up there because the person who owned it lived there. Historian Scott Dawson, who has excavated Hatteras Island for 15 years, described the cohabitation evidence as the most significant discovery yet in the Roanoke investigation. The oral traditions the academic establishment had dismissed for a century had documented something real. Physical evidence from two directions converges on the same conclusion. A group went inland to Bertie County, to the Roanoke-Chowan River junction, and integrated with the communities already there. A second group went southeast to Croatoan and integrated with the tribe on Hatteras Island. The colony didn't dissolve into mystery. It fractured into two documented survivor groups, and both merged into the populations already living here. To verify the biological dimension of that merger, scientists built the Lost Colony DNA Project. Led by genetic genealogist Roberta Estes, the project collects DNA from modern families with documented connections to indigenous communities across the Roanoke coastal plain. Y chromosomes pass from father to son with minimal mutation across hundreds of generations. They carry ancestral lineage signatures intact across centuries. The project has matched dozens of modern participants to 16th century English genetic markers, markers consistent with Elizabethan colonist populations. The clearest documented case involves a participant the project identifies only as Mr. Brown. His Y DNA matches a Tudor-era English lineage with high statistical confidence. That lineage aligns with the surname Brown in the 1587 Roanoke colonist roster. Two names on that list: Henry Brown and William Brown. A living person's Y chromosome tracing back with high precision to two specific names on a passenger list written 438 years ago. The Lost Colony DNA Project is still active and recruiting. If your family carries documented roots in the Lumbee, Croatoan, or neighboring Carolina indigenous communities, your genetic record may hold direct evidence from 1587. 4 independent evidence lines, an archival map, 2 excavated inland sites, a coastal cohabitation pit, a genetic match, all pointing in the same direction. Roanoke Colony did not vanish. An empire handed 115 people a royal charter, stranded them on the wrong island, and then withheld their resupply ships for 3 years while it fought the Spanish Armada. Those 115 people responded the way humans respond when institutions abandon them. They found the people who knew how to live where they were. They set down their English identity markers, not in defeat, in pragmatism. They learned Algonquian. They fished the coastal sounds the Croatoan way. They built families across a cultural boundary 16th century England had never expected to cross. The first European-American cultural merger in North America happened in Carolina pine forests and barrier islands in the late 1580s. No monument marks it. No treaty was signed. 2 groups in a survival situation chose pragmatism, and the descendants are still here. We spent 4 centuries looking for a lost English colony. We should have been looking for the family it became. If this kind of history matters to you, subscribe. More hidden chapters ahead.